Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be deploying our very small Flask application. It's just going to say something like hello from Salt, and we're just going to go ahead and deploy that. Now there are several caveats to follow. To actually go through. One, we have to deploy our supervisor config, and this course isn't related to supervisor teaching, so I've got a pre-made supervisor config that I'm going to go ahead and deploy. Two, we need to make sure that whenever the supervisor config or the Flask application changes, we need to make sure that the supervisor restarts the Flask application. So even if it's deployed and running and we update the Flask application, it's not going to restart unless there's a change in the file. And we don't want to keep restarting the application if there are no changes. So that way we get to go ahead and restart the application when only needed. Before we get started, I want to make sure that we are on the same page. In our last video, we installed a Flask application. In this, I've gone ahead and added the app directory here, where the Flask application state is being installed. So if you want to go ahead and you can just do app directory, file.directory, and wherever you want to make sure it's mode 755. And the ownership has to be correct as well. So this will just create the directory for where our Flask applications live. Now this here, I've created the templates that we'll be using for the supervisor config as well as the application as well. So the supervisor config is this. Again, this isn't a supervisor class, so I'm not gonna go ahead and teach you, but you're more than welcome to pause here and copy all of this down. I'll also have this in the description as well. All it's basically stating is that the app belongs in this directory. It's gotta have, a start after 5 seconds and auto restart true. So if the app dies, it'll automatically restart and redirect error and so on. Nothing too fancy. This is our application. All we're doing is importing from Flask and we're routing it to the root, and it's just gonna say hello from Salt. And when we run it, we're going to run it on port 8000. So we'll be able to log in, or we'll be able to curl on port 8000 locally, and we should get hello from Salt. One thing to note is I added the version here. So whenever there are changes into this application, this version should be incremented. That way, when we create our state, even if let me reiterate that. Even if this file wasn't modified, but another file of the application is modified, this version should be increased, because that way our salt state will only watch this one file rather than watch 10 different files. So, but we're not going to have separate files in our application. We're just going to run off of this one. So with that being said, let's go ahead and create our init.sls. So first, we're going to go ahead and include our Flask application, our Flask state, which installs Flask. Second, we're going to go ahead and create the application. At least put the source down for the application. Opt flask app / app.py. root mode. And that should be it. I shouldn't need anything else. However, I can require the SLS that I've stated. This is not necessary, but it can work. Basically what it's doing is that it's making sure that this Flask application gets deployed before this. So you can require a whole salt state like you could require a file or command or whatever it is that you want to do. And that's fine. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it because that's too much constraint. And I don't want to be restricted down the line for any given reason. So that's going to go ahead and create the application. Then we need to deploy the supervisor config file. So create supervisor config. Oh, we actually forgot to give the source of this. Oh, I'm sorry. Source salt flask app. There we go. Name /opt/ flask app / supervisor. I'm gonna keep everything in the same directory as the application. So the supervisor config is gonna be in the same directory as the application config. So let me make sure I spelled that right. Supervisor. Yep. Source salt flask app / templates / supervisor.conf. All right, and user root group root mode 644. I want to change this one to 755 because I've got that app run there, so 644 won't work. So this is, we'll do 0644 here in this one on the config. And that should be it. I shouldn't need anything else. So let's go ahead and run the app. And now we're going to use the supervisor module. So supervisor.running name flask app. And this name comes from the supervisor config. I've named the program or application flask app. So that's where that name goes. And we also need the user is going to be root, and the conf file is going to be in /opt/ flask app / supervisor.conf. And we're going to go ahead and watch that file as well. So /opt/ supervisor, flask app supervisor.conf. And we're also going to go ahead and watch the app as well. So /opt/ flask app / app.py. And let me make sure I got my watch statements right here. Requisites, yep. So watch, and then there you go. Okay. So that should work. I know I've got two files here, but they are in their own individual lists, or they're at least there in their they are at least there in list form, so it shouldn't be a problem. They're in their dictionary. They're in their own dictionaries. So let's see now. Make sure I got, so watch cmd, watch, and then listen and file. This should work. It may complain, actually, it may complain that we've got two files, but we'll test it out. So we'll name this init.sls. So whenever the supervisor config or the app.py changes, this should go ahead and restart the Flask app. So let me go ahead and do a kitchen destroy, and then I'll do a kitchen converge as well. I'm going to stop here since I'm going to do a kitchen converge. It's going to take forever afterwards. So I'll stop here, and then I'm going to go ahead and start back up even if I have an error. I'll post the error, I'll show the error, and then we'll fix it together again. So there was an error with the run app. It said the supervisor.running is not available. I wonder if it's supervisord.running. Let's check. It is supervisor D. So supervisord.running. Also make sure that you've got the Flask app in your top.sls as well. So let me go ahead and change that to supervisor D, and then we'll reconverge real quick. This shouldn't take too long. Everything else is already installed. Our Flask, our supervisor, that's already been installed. It's just now the app. And it says adding service adding service, flask app, starting flask app. Okay, so even though the Salt report said that it started the Flask application, that's actually not the case. It didn't start anything, so, and I think I found out why. First of all, the supervisor D daemon has to be running for supervisor.ctl to work, which actually is what this uses. Instead of it running supervisor D, it actually runs supervisor.ctl, which makes it a little bit harder. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that supervisor D runs before this. So, and then we're only going to use an unless statement. So we have to use pipe and grep in an unless statement. It's a little ugly, but that's fine. So dot run name supervisor d -c /op/ flask app /supervisor.conf, and just give me one moment. Okay, so basically supervisor D needs to be running with this configuration before supervisor.ctl can actually run it. And if it can run it, which is fine, great, but this will also already run it, so this may throw out an error. So this is a little caveat here. I wish this was actually using supervisor D rather than just supervisor.ctl, but it doesn't look like I can get around it. Another way around it is I can actually refactor the supervisor.ctl, or sorry, the supervisor state. Instead of installing it with pip, I can install it with yum. That might work, but I still need a default supervisor config, which I don't have. I'm just using the supervisor config for the app. So that makes it a little bit difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run supervisor here, and unless it's already running, and if it is running, then it's just going to go ahead and start the app. And this should either pass or fail. So let's see how this goes. It shouldn't take too long for this, even though we've got an extra condition there. Actually, that didn't work because I need to add a grep v grep. Now that will omit the grep line, and it'll only watch out for the supervisor line. That's why the unless execution already succeeded there, even though there wasn't an app, and we know there wasn't an app. Okay, so this ran the app, and this went ahead and started the app. So this is not starting, already started, which is fine. That's exactly what we need. Now this will restart the app through supervisor.ctl. It'll be able to do that. Even this will always be running, but this will go ahead and restart the app. So that way we can go ahead and get around it. So we can test that out now. Let's go ahead and change our app.py, this version, to 2. And now let's run another converge, and we should see supervisor D unless statements already executed. And this, we should see a new start. Yep. So this unless statement is executed. The file, in fact, did change, and it did restart the app. Okay, so that's one way around it. It's a very what's the word? It's a very hacky way to check and make sure something is running before something else runs, but it does work. So with that said, that's, I guess, 2 things that I've shown today. 1, supervisor can be a little hacky. 2 is this watch statement, and there are several of those. There's listen in, there's listen in states, there's watch files, and you can actually configure these to like watch in and then put in the run app service. So watch in run app service, or sorry, state. And that would also do it that way. So there's two ways to watch. You can either watch from the service or you can watch from the file to the service. And so that way we can go ahead and modify the state however we want. However, but I like to have everything in one place, so I put it on the service all the time. All right, so with that said, on the next video, we should be going over the test infra stuff finally. And we'll be creating a test state to make sure that these files are exactly as they are. Supervisor D and is running, and Flask as well. So I hope to see you guys then.